illegal. And I have a hard time understanding why they can't grasp this concept, is that the reason why
I've been here.
and the reason why there are no through traffic signs on both the entrance and exit way of the unauthorized access road is because it's not legal. And the reason why they put no through traffic is because it's not legal. So to protect themselves from liability, they place those signs. So, you know, the reason that the traffic volume has increased, I mean, you have to understand it's a 24/7 day operation. We're not talking about just employees. We're talking about ambulance drivers. We're talking about taxi drivers. We're talking about people visiting family members. We're talking about employees, delivery drivers. I mean, we are talking about a frequency of traffic that occurs at all hours of the day.
This is not new.
I understand, but what is also not
I
new?
grew up over there. This is not new.
Correct, and what's is new is that, or what is the reality is they've done, the county, city, whomever, at some point has simply just opened it. And when you ask how or why, nobody knows.
So did anybody look at the sale of the contract?
I did.
And was there any clauses in there?
According to the sale of the agreement, there's easements that were given, but when I asked for the easements, I was hung up on by the county, and thus here we are. So I did inquire, I did ask, I did look, I also contacted DOT. DOT never authorized the access roadway connecting a local road to a county road. In order to do that, you need the cooperation of the DOT commissioner. And the reason why you need the cooperation of the DOT commissioner is he has to authorize it. And one of the requirements of authorization is a public hearing. Well, we know that the public will come out in against it, therefore not allowing it. The second part of it is, why have it? So if we're advocating public safety, we're allowing traffic at an incredible amount to go down a roadway that is 15 feet wide. I can't reemphasize that enough. 15 feet wide with 0 sidewalks. So the part that's hard for me to understand is there's another road. I mean, there's a highway. In fact, the speed limit on that road is 20 miles an hour. So I just am, you know, just hard for me to understand why it's such a uphill battle to fix such a dangerous problem when it's not legal.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
What would you suggest?
I would suggest enforcing the law. I mean, making it legal. I mean, either we have to put close it off to emergency vehicles only that it's intended for, and divert the traffic.
But I thought emergency vehicles travel the boulevard.
Correct. So this would be for the exception. This would be for the doomsday scenario that they continuously, you know, state every time the reason why they don't want to close it. I mean, we're planning for a worst case scenario. And in that case, a gate that's breakaway would allow for access. I mean, and I also think that concrete barriers is another thing that really could be removed as well. I think it's a fair compromise to allow vehicles to circular out in the event of an emergency. But you have to re-educate the public as far as signage, you know, closing the roads and diverting the behavior, because it won't stop. It's getting worse. They are growing. Golden Hill is a rehabilitation center. Okay, according to the IDA's own report, they have 277 employees at the moment with plans to add more. Thirdly, which I reemphasized several times, where are the taxes that Golden Hill has paid? Why hasn't anyone followed up? They are delinquent on school taxes. There was a pilot test that nobody knows how. The city is getting nothing for this, 0. Nobody knows. And it's like everything else. We're going to demolish buildings that with contractors taking stone. Nobody knows. How did it happen? I don't know. It's these deals that happen over and over and over. And then we get left holding the bag when revenue shortfalls occur. And then we look back and we see these deals that were passed under the noses of everyone. And then everyone trying to take what's left and screwing over the taxpayer, screwing over me and everyone else. While the corporate companies are living lavish. It's very, very frustrating. I'm floored that we haven't even followed up on that.
I just don't. Go ahead, Sean.
Yeah, I think that this obviously is a site plan issue, should be referred to the planning board, and they should be able to, the petitioners should be able to demonstrate why it's changed. Because as he has indicated, obviously it has changed. The fact that they put barriers up to prevent emergency vehicles from having access to a sprinkler head.
We don't even know who put those barriers.
The county,
Well, we'll find out.
Bob Sudlow at the county. Believe me when I tell you, I have had several conversations with that gentleman. Nice guy, but he is well informed of the problem because there was at one point buses literally parking out in front of the top of the road. And there was a gentleman who lives at the top of the hill who was suffocating from the fumes. So as a compromise, they simply just put concrete barriers there. And that's just what they did. I mean, that's,
What about?
This whole issue should be referred to the city planning board for their action. That's it.
What about a day of ticketing?
I don't really think that's fair. I don't think it's, look, I don't want to see anybody get a ticket. I want to fix the problem. Ticketing,
Exactly.
asking, it doesn't work. You have to.
Ticketing might.
It's not, it's illegal. I think the city is at such a great increased liability that there are people walking, there are new children on the street. I see kids riding their bikes now. These homeowners are changing hands. These cars are crazy. And then oftentimes you'll see them on the phone, looking down, driving up, driving down.
Well, that's everywhere.
But the roadway is 15 feet wide. It is not 15 feet wide everywhere, and most roads have sidewalks. These do not. So from a safety standpoint, it's crazy. Someone is going to get killed.
So Brett, I don't want you to put words in the chief's mouth. Did he give any recommendations on what we should do? Or
Well, he was gonna speak with Chief Tinty and Mike Shupp, and,
Right.
you know, as he said last time, he was warming up to the idea of this, and we had a good conversation then, of course, about maybe even just taking that section of road out there and having him have access to the gate over where those concrete Jersey barriers are now as maybe a way to resolve this. And then everybody who goes to Golden Hill would have access, of course, through the Golden Hill Drive from the Boulevard, which is what Chief Brown typically uses for his apparatus 99% of the time. And for the 1% of the time that he needs to access the other way, he sounded like he was okay with coming up and using this, you know, this keyless radio-controlled gate as a way in that, if he needed to do that.
And I just had one other point. I did reach out to Golden Hill again and again and again. They've told me that wasn't a priority for them. So, you know, why they won't respond or even willing to help is very frustrating because I've tried and I've been hung up on. And, you know, granted, I've been a little frustrated over time trying to get hold of somebody. But, you know, one of my things is the cost I think they should pay for because they haven't paid any taxes. So perhaps maybe they can donate $5,000 in order to pay for the gates and fix the problem that they're causing. You know, I am very upset at the fact that they don't pay anything.
On the
And they
question.
Who doesn't pay taxes?
They're not paying any
To pay a
taxes.
pilot.
They got a pilot that nobody knows how it happened, and if you look at the document, it's crazy. And they're delinquent.
The county again.
Go ask the county, because you know what happens when they don't pay the school tax? The city pays it, then has to recollect from the county. So the question
The
really
city
becomes,
makes everybody a lot.
correct. So I know that they're 300,000 in the hole. I don't even know if they paid them.
Tony, Joe, you up first? Yeah, all right.
Well, it was established already that it didn't take any more time for emergency vehicles to reach the facility, whether coming up Glen Street or coming up the boulevard.
They were for
Second, I went up and looked at that fire hydrant that Chief Brown was talking about for the access for the facility. It's on Glen Street. It's not even facing the facility. It's nowhere near the facility. I don't even think it belongs to the facility. I think it was there for Glen Street. And he's saying access, it's outside the perimeters of the gate. There's no reason that he cannot access that fire hydrant with his vehicles not accessing the property. He can access that fire hydrant without accessing the property. And he's talking about accessing the property to access that fire hydrant. That fire hydrant's on Glen Street. It's facing the other way. I don't even think that fire hydrant belongs, like I said, I don't want to repeat myself, belongs to the facility.
All right, so,
What about Ben's suggestion? of-
Yeah, why can't we refer this to planning?
yeah, I was just gonna say,
Let's move on this.
I'll address this with the planning board, see if we can get some help from the planning board.
I mean, it seems like it's just been coming back every month, and we're not getting any resolution, with people on vacation. We need to move on.
Yeah,
One way or the other.
I'll check with the planning
What
board.
happened on Friday?
Or is that too much again? Like some like gas stations, I haven't done
So you can make a motion,
So, are we gonna have to come back again, because, 30 years is a long time, if we have to come back another month, I've been fighting for 3. So here we are again with another opportunity to do the right thing, and if we can move it along, we bring it to another committee. I mean, why? Again, we're stalling the problem that, my hope, I'm not saying we need to put a gate or not, it's why don't we move to collaboratively solve a problem instead of just moving like snails in hopes that either it goes away or we not fix the problem. We are tax-paying citizens. We are residents of a street. There are lots of people that have been dealing with this for years, and you mentioned it yourself. This has been ongoing, and that's what everybody says. And here we are collectively with an opportunity to fix it. I'm like, well, I don't know. Maybe?
And
I don't know if gate is the right answer.
I don't know, I agree, but what I do know is that it's illegal. And what I do know is that someone is gonna get hurt. And government loves reactive. We gotta wait for somebody to get hurt. There are people walking there now. Golden Hill is hiring people like crazy. There's a 24-hour day operation. It's just a matter of
That's a good thing,
time.
though.
Well, but that is. But I agree. But at the same time, we have snow on the road. You have a narrow road. It's 15 feet wide. I can't reemphasize that enough. With no sidewalks.
Why do they have to access it that way?
That's a good question. I really do believe this is behavioral. I don't think people are intentionally saying, I need to go this way. I think it's just behavioral.
So a redirection
Right, but
sign is not a resolution or possibility?
I think-
ticketing,
Ticketing, I think, is just unfair to people that are going to work. I don't think that it's their fault.
They're
I think it's just-
violating the law.
It's either illegal.
How?
Okay, if it's illegal, they're violating
Right,
the
you
law,
need to
you
get
ticket
ticketed.
them
But I
and stop.
understand the context that he means it in.
I'm not
You're
sure that-
instructing them.
Not to mention that-
I don't think wasting the police's resources as well is effective either. It costs to ticket.
And Bill?
I agree, and I think this is just, it's ridiculous that every month we keep talking about it, nothing's really happening. I agree completely with you. But, and if it's a dead end on the books and it's not supposed to be there, let's get rid of that stretch of the street. Whoever was responsible for putting it there, let them know this, if it's not on the books as a legitimate street.
I agree.
At the other end, put a dead end sign, it's a dead end, you can't go there, block that off, have the
They
gate to
have
where
to
the
go
fire
down.
department can get in where the barriers are now, that's it. I mean, it's not supposed to be there. If I went and paved behind my house, a little road so I could get out another way, I mean, I can't do that, it's not supposed to be a street, so, but if it's there and I do it and no one knows about it, no one says anything, does that mean, 10 years later I can, no, it's been there so I can keep accessing it? So if it's technically not supposed to be a road, then why is it there?
I mean, and I'm proactive, and that's why, I'm just hearing this last month, the first time I'm hearing this, and I want to get this solved. And I don't want to keep on pushing it off as I've iterated, I don't want to keep on pushing this off, so if it needs to go to the planning board, where they're going to make a decision on it faster. But we need to do something on this, regardless if it's putting dead ends. I know, it's been brought up about the cost of putting a gate there, that let's push it towards the planning board where they might be able to make a decision one way or the other on what's going to happen here. I mean, we have to do that.
Nina.
I like the way you think, Tony. Don't talk about it, be about it. So it's gonna be pushed in the direction of the planning board. This is something that's been happening. This man is taking out his time. Whether he's over the top or whether he's right on point, regardless, he's been here consistently for 2 months. And I feel like we're not supposed to let it fall on deaf ears, because God forbid something comes to pass that he's saying. I don't want to be the one sitting on this council to just let it rock the way it's been rocking, because nobody wants to do anything about it. So if it's going to go in the direction of the planning board, why can't we send it with a suggestion? We can't make a decision, but why can't we send it with a suggestion that if it is validly not legal, block it off?
Well, what are our options? Could we sit here tonight, come up with a resolution to say, let's put
Make
a,
it a one-way thing. Right.
Personally,
But that's not a plan to do that.
Site plan should.
Well, but still, why can't we make a suggestion to review, see if it's legal,
Where is
like
the
this
site
gentleman say, I think he's researched more than anybody has, and, move forward to block it off if it's not a legal street.
so what are our
Sorry.
options?
Joe,
I just want you to elaborate that it took us 21 years to get them to put a storm drain.
So what are our options? What can we do tonight? Are we able to resolve the problem tonight?
We can come up with a resolution.
Then we can come up with a resolution that the council would have to vote on.
We make a suggestion to take this back to legal stage.
What do we want to suggest here?
Then you bring it to the planning board for a site plan review.
To see if it is legal. If it's not legal, our suggestion is to bring it back to a state where it's safe. For the residents to
I think whether it's legal or illegal, I know it's not. But we're gonna say it's legal, so we're gonna allow this unsafe situation to occur. Nobody's ever disagreed with the fact that it's unsafe. I mean, where I'm flabbergasted is that everyone's like, oh man, terrible idea, it's so unsafe there, I know what you're talking about. Every single person you ask the chief, you ask the fire chief, you ask everyone in this room, there's people who live there. Oh, yeah, terrible. And they will tell you it was worse when the jail was open. So again, where I'm just scratching my head thinking, wow, we're all acknowledging an unsafe problem. I'm providing solutions. There's another road.
Well, you're
that
really
doesn't-
not providing solutions. What I did, I thought was provide a solution. I agree with you that you feel strongly that it's unsafe. I'm sorry to just jump in like that. I apologize. But I strongly feel like, as a committee, can we suggest? Can we suggest that it goes to the planning board, get reviewed, because we cannot say, all right, that shouldn't be a street. We don't have, I don't believe we have the authority to do that, Mr. President, do we? I don't.
No, we're not saying that, it isn't.
Well, it's private
If it still
property,
says
right?
a dead end, then it's not a street. No, I'm not saying that.
I
That's
think
not- that's not
my honest
what
opinion is, and these guys can tell you that live there longer, is that it was roped up for years, and years and years and years and
It
years.
was.
And it just opened up magically like one day, like magic. And then one day, my understanding is, it was paved.
It was roped off.
Yeah, this was,
So can we
this.
just put another road there? Is that
I-
something we can do?
I think it really, I would like to see it maybe left with the gate, because options are good, you know, if there is a situation there, you know what, maybe people do need to access it, but we have to also educate the public on with signage and ensuring that they know where to go. I mean, because what's gonna happen is you rope it off with nobody knowing, I'm gonna give be 1,000 cars in the street. You know, so it has to come from an informative, you know, I think, education approach. This road will be closing in X days, using that sign the police have to tell messages, this road will be turned to that, and increasing it through signage. I think we need signage, and, you know, I don't think it can happen overnight, I don't think it's fair, but I think we have to implement this solution, permanent solution, through education.
Okay. So the plan is for us to talk to the planning board, get a site plan review, and let them make a determination what we can do here? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah,
First step.
well, that's the first step though, isn't it?
Well,
We
that-
have to talk to the planning board?
No, just send a notice.
Send a notice.
Send a notice.
And then contact, communicate.
And the reason, let's just be clear about why we need to do this, because I think he's like, why can't we just
No,
resolve
no,
the
I
problem
understand.
now? There are implications that are beyond our purview, that the planning board's aware of, right? So that's why we have to do it properly.
No, I agree, I think.
So that's why it's going to the planning board, it's not being kicked down the road toward further indecision. So I think we ought to be clear about that.
When the new owners came in, didn't they have to go to the planning board?
They did for
They
lot
did.
line, for lot line revisions, and the
Right.
question was asked, I was there, are there any other changes? And they said no.
But one of the things that's notable to
So
know
that
about
would
the
make
sale,
sense then to go, yeah.
the land was
Yeah.
chopped up. So they redrew the lines for the sale conveniently using Glen Street as buried.
That's what I
So
thought.
that's why they did it, and that's why, my honest opinion is, you know, I have strong views about that sale that I think are really questionable, but that's a separate issue. But they
Exactly.
rezoned and remapped that property specifically for the sale using Glen Street. Now, the second concern I have is they're selling the property at the time. Okay, they're gonna sell it to who knows who, for who knows what, but they're going to try, my opinion is, to keep that road open, because it's only for their benefit. I don't see how, there's no need for it. So, you know, there's a lot of concerns I have with my communications with.
How do they benefit? I'm sorry. How do they benefit?
How does it benefit?
How does Golden Hill benefit with that road?
I just think that I don't know, I've tried calling and asking them that myself, why they wouldn't be willing to sit down and.
So that's an assumption right there.
It
It could
is.
be
It's an
something
opinion.
so simple as nobody just actually took it past this point.
I-
It's just that simple.
It could be, I think.
I mean,
Yeah.
I was just wondering how they benefit by their employees leaving in that direction. If they put a sign up and they block it, their employees can't leave from that direction. Simple.
I mean, I've tried to reach
It's
out to
just,
them.
it's just there's regulations as to how you do signage, and hence we are in a committee here. So, I mean, I just think we can talk about this till we're blue.
I
Let's
just think
be
we
about it,
deserve
not
it.
talk about it. I don't know. This
There-
makes sense to me.
there's
What
20 people
are
showed
we
up.
gonna do?
So planning board is the next.
The planning board.
I mean, they just,
For, like you said, site review, and you can take it from there.
All right,
The recommendations.
all right, that's where we're at.
Meantime, the chief, when he comes back, is to talk to the other chief, and they might have some suggestions as well.
More people involved, the better. I think that's a good idea.
I think we've reached out to both chiefs.
Yeah,
We got a little more lighting here now.
we got President Noble.
All right, last, and certainly not least, we have President Noble here.
sorry.
He wants to, talk about the ethics, review.
Right, so my thing is, last decision by the ethics board also came with some suggested changes in the ethics law that would serve to help the ethics commission and do its job better. I think there was some things like investigative powers and things like that. And then also, doesn't seem to be any mechanism for like authorizing funding to, hire attorneys and things like that, you know what I mean? So the council always signs off on this stuff, so I think there should be, and I've had a conversation with our corporation counsel, Kevin, about this, some kind of mechanism that will tell you, some way that they are allowed to, spend funds, and where they're gonna come from.
25,000 that's there, how to spend it?
Well, where it comes from. I mean, there's no line for the ethics board, so we need to, does it come out of like corporation council, or does it come out of just a line that we designate or some such thing like that? And then there's like, there's really no, what would you say, categories or lines of severity, in other words, some way to, if the offense is not as severe as, another offense, there would be these amount of charges against
Classifications,
them or.
like classify A, B, or C?
Yeah, that type of thing. It just makes it a little more clear and simpler. I just think it's just too convoluted now. So I think I'll bring the recommendations in, we'll look at the law, and I think, Dan, do you have anything you speak to Kevin about this at all?
I've spoken to Kevin about it quite a lot. I've also been involved in it for 4 years, and I've come to this committee and to Laws and Rules repeatedly and indicated that there are significant changes that have to be made, and nobody has ever followed up on that in terms of the changes that are necessary. In terms of the funding, I don't really agree. The statute is pretty clear, and it says that if the Corporation Council has a potential conflict of interest, funds shall be made available for them. There's no,
Does it say where the funds come from?
That's, it's the,
Well, there's a question right there, right?
well, that's not for the ethics, that's not for the
Well,
ethics
that's
bill. The
part of
ethics, that's something that you have to address through finance, but it's not an amendment to the ethics bill. The ethics bill is very clear that funds shall be made available. I think when outside counsel funds are, incurred, they come out of corporation council's, the consultant line. And that's the case for the ethics board, that's the case for the zoning board, that's the case for, any board where there's a conflict of interest in our office can't represent them. If you look at the charter, we've discussed this issue before, the charter says that our office represents the council, the mayor, the council, and all boards. And if there is a conflict that arises between any of those three clients under the Code of Professional Responsibility, we have to disclose that and say that outside counsel has to be brought in. And at that point, whichever board it is, retains counsel, and, the hour, the fees come out of, an office's consultant. I mean, the bigger issues, relate to the financial disclosures, whether or not the financial disclosures are, subject to, FOIL requests, which is something that has been brought up over and over again, and there's been no, communication or anything from anyone on the council asking to change the language as it stands now, which is completely unworkable.
Was it going to comptroller's office now, right?
No, the language as it stands now says that they are submitted in sealed envelopes, and that's all it says. So they are never unsealed, unless you amend the statute to say that they are unsealed and this is what happens with them. I brought this up over and over again. I've received FOIL requests from the media. I can't disclose anything unless you amend the statute. And at this point, all it says is they are submitted in sealed envelopes. We have no idea what's in any of these envelopes because they're remaining sealed. Okay, there's no vehicle to unseal them. There are other concerns. The mayor had concerns about the provisions, regarding, appointment, and that the mayor has, exclusive authority to appoint members, and members serve at his pleasure. The members of the council have suggested that that be amended so that the council has certain appointments, and he has certain appointments, and he agrees with that. There's a need to revisit the provision that says they can be removed at, the mayor's pleasure. There are a lot of problems with with the statute the way it stands now. It has to be, amended. I've also brought up the fact that the statute now requires that the disclosures are filed. Yes, Bernie?
No, not
Is there something you want to share?
No, not, I meant it.
Okay, that the disclosures have to be filed initially within a certain number of days of the public officials taking office, and then it indicates that any changes are to be submitted when those changes occur, and then it also says that you have to file it every year. And there's a question as to whether or not, if you have to advise, any change in status, why are we filing it every year?
Right.
If it's already been filed, it's been filed. But again, given that the envelopes are sealed and nobody knows what's in them, it doesn't really make a difference.
True. Yeah, I
Is
remember.
that question?
Okay, yes.
The ethics law was amended, and it appears that it was amended to protect the guilty. It was amended to keep these envelopes sealed. It was amended to not reveal client relationship to council people, that they didn't have to reveal this information, and that was another amendment. Now, I'm waiting 9 months, and I think it's above and beyond a reasonable amount of time for my charges to be addressed. And I think if you haven't got any functioning thing here, I'm going to have to take it elsewhere. And I will, because this is unreasonable, 9 months.
And we have no control over that. We have no.
Well, I have no control over it either. I filed the charges, they should have been addressed in a reasonable amount of time. Okay? And I'm gonna get someone, a higher court or committee to address this issue and to look at what you did here with the ethics law, because you tore it apart. You do not have the same ethics law the county has. You do not have the same ethics law the state has. I'm going to repeat myself. It appears you've amended it to protect the guilty.
Well, anyway, as you can see, we need some more comments.
Yeah, well, and it's kind of, it's impossible to sit here and talk about it in general terms.
No,
So
you got to
specific.
go through ways and means.
Yeah.
Bring questions that you have. to be addressed with it. And look at everything. Well, I just also wanted to bring it up because the new members need to do the disclosure form. So hopefully they have to April, so.
The 3 months.
Right, well, it said 2, but then April, so I didn't quite understand.
May 1st.
Is that the one where we have to dictate what we've been doing? I don't know.
Oh, there's a special form that you look at, or you'll have to ask. I'll talk to Carter about it, and I'll put it in the box.
So there'll be a form in our box to write out our disclosure.
So, what do you want to like appoint a committee to review?
Well, I thought you could probably do it through this committee, right, general government? That something, you just need time every month to go through a section or something. You know what I
Dan, do
mean?
you have anything written down? In other words, you brought it to the committee, you have like a memo or something that we might work off of?
Well, you need, in your box, a copy of the ethics law, if you don't have that.
Yeah, I have that.
So you have that. So I'll get you the disclosure form, and I can get you some of the questions that were presented to me, and then, you know, those other questions you heard this evening. You know,
Right. But Dan seemed like he had a systematized, you've gone through this and you've made recommendations before. Is there something you've written down that we could?
Most of the issues flow from the decision that you have to make as a council with regard to what happens to the disclosure forms. Okay, that's the first decision that you have to make.
That's in here, Dan? The form we're talking about.
Yeah. Until that decision is made, everything else pretty much is on hold, okay? What the statute currently says is, okay.
And as it stands now, you fill out the disclosure form, they're sealed,
Yes,
nobody gets them, right?
yeah, pretty much.
Right, that's good stuff. It's good government right there. That's right. Wow.
Love that.
Wow.
Hard sound.
All right, so,
There are issues with regard to how public the information in the disclosure form should be.
Okay,
And whether or not every public official, including every member of every board, and pretty much every department head and every assistant department head should be obligated to publicly provide all of their financial their investments and a significant amount of personal information. There are cases that address this under the Freedom of Information Law that indicate that you can limit the disclosure of the forms once they are unsealed and processed. But that's a decision that you have to make as a group as to whether or not you want to give individuals the option to request that certain aspects of their financial disclosures are private.
right.
There are also potential labor issues with regard to employees who are operating under contracts being obligated by a collateral statute to reveal personal information and to make that personal information public and available to the media.
Right.
And the ethics law at this point includes about 6 or 7 different categories of individuals. There are public officials such as yourself. There are department heads who have employment, individual employment contracts. There are department heads who are part of bargaining units. There are individuals who are on boards who don't work for the city at all, who are being required to submit significant private information
Right.
that potentially is going to be turned over to the media.
Right.
I mean, obviously, people have privacy interests in this information, and, it's a decision that has to be made. The other thing that everyone needs to, recognize is that this has been in effect for how long, Jim?
A while, I think the law hadn't been in effect.
Right.
Then it was revamped.
And they've processed a grand total of 2 complaints,
Right.
okay? And there is,
Presumably, there are models to look at, though.
Well, the county, we were trying to pattern off the county, then the county never completed it by the time we voted on ours.
Okay.
Well, that was the disclosure form, was
Right.
being patterned after the county's disclosure form.
They have one now, Dan?
Did they ever enact it? I don't think they did.
I don't know if they passed the one that you ended up passing or not, but, you know, again, as long as it remains sealed and there's no process for reviewing it or determining what information is disclosed and who it's disclosed to, you know, all the other changes we're talking about are pretty much, you know, academic.
I was looking at this list here, it lists who should have disclosures. I mean, even members of the city board of ethics has to do this disclosure form. I mean, it's just kind of ironic, because there's like 25 things that have to be done. That's what I'm looking at.
Well, if you're talking about all the members of the planning board,
Right.
all the members of the city board, the
Right,
members of the board of appeals, members of the human rights commission, the board of ethics, the local development board, the revolving loan fund, plus basically every department head, every assistant department head, you know, we're talking hundreds of people.
Right, because when I thought it was kind of ironic, the office of the city board of ethics. But this, has this ever been done, do you know?
That's one information.
All these people ever, based on our charter and our code, have ever done? I'm just curious.
Are you asking me whether all these people have filed?
Based on, this goes back to 1984. Has anybody ever done it? This is what I'm
Well, no, this
asking.
doesn't go back to 1984.
Well, I'm looking at amendments.
This goes back about 4 years.
Oh, okay.
Okay, and, you know, whether every person on, you know, this list has filed or not, I can't tell you. Could tell you the last time it was checked, the number of members of the council hadn't filed. You know, the people who voted on it didn't file. You know,
Does it say members of the council?
yes, it says members of the council.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's the matter with you?
Oh, there it is.
Slacker.
Okay, I kept looking for Alderman, I was like,
That's your
okay.
council.
There's also a provision in the legislation that says it's, you know, the obligation of, you know, the mayor and the city clerk to inform all of these individuals that they have to file, including the individuals who adopted the legislation. Okay, you know, there should be no, you know, burden placed on the city clerk or, you know, the mayor to tell people that they have to comply with the law. You know, so there are a litany of things that have to be, you
Well,
know,
I
addressed, but. you know,
I remember the
that's not
discussion,
somewhere.
I remember the discussion when it came into the financial disclosure. A lot of people were offended. There was really some pretty deep stuff there. And I think that was what kind of stalled everything, was that financial disclosure, I think. Because it was really intense, your IRA, your 401K, I mean, real estate property, child support payments. I mean, it was just really, I felt it was somewhat invasive.
I don't mean to interrupt, but I just want to, I'm not a lawyer, I'm not an attorney, but I'm familiar with the freedom of information law. And you can actually exempt the right to release information so long as if it is an invasion of personal privacy. So an exception to the public officers law, it's under section 87, the reason why I know this, I was involved in this, where you can actually, as an agency, limit the information that is foilable if it meets certain exceptions. One of them is if it's an invasion of personal privacy, then you can limit the release of that. So you can say no based on that provision. So there's two parts. One is the requirement to have an ethical statement. The second part is the ability to actually foil it. They can, I believe, and again, I'm not an attorney, they can restrict that based on those types of exceptions.
Right, and what constitutes an invasion of personal privacy is addressed in a whole litany
Yes.
of cases, and the majority of the information we're talking about is not an exemption, you know, under the open meetings law, and, you know, it has to be disclosed. And a decision has to be made by this body, how far down that path you want to go.
Yeah, you gotta strike a balance.
Exactly,
between what
but that's a
the public
political
needs to know.
decision that, you know, the council has to
What
make.
seriously affect their decision, not what's in your IRA or your 401K. And
Whatever that balance is, we gotta talk about that balance, but there's gotta be we gotta calibrate in some way what they need to know, the public should need to know. And what's really, you know, potentially private and damaging. Otherwise, you're not gonna have people run for office.
All
Yeah?
right, so does anybody have a suggestion how we should attack this?
It sounds like we should look at the disclosure.
Yeah.
Read everything in it, see how you wanna handle releasing
Alright,
it.
we'll
Do
start with
that
that.
first and then go through the rest of it.
And in the meantime, for next month, if everybody can at least kind of read through this and start looking for items we want to,
I'll get the disclosure
address.
forms where they are
great.
now.
All right.
In the box.
Is that the one we gotta sign?
It's much more than
Doesn't
signing,
sign, it's
Tony.
filling out.
Much more than signing.
Give it to me now, why give it to me?
Just seal it.
I always need them.
Just see
So I'm gonna have to put anything, I'm just sealing it anyway.
I can say anything you want there and say.
When if you open it up, there's nothing there.
Well, Cards, I like cards.
At the end here.
Yeah. No, I don't.
We don't need a resolution from me to talk to the planning board.
Oh, I heard it.
Yeah,
I thought you were gonna send something to put it.
Well, I'll talk to them and see
Let me
what they
know
have.
the name.
All right, okay.
Thank you, Brittany.
I motion that we review it.
Well, I have one
All right, go ahead.
No, we had an open thing on this. I have one.
No,
I
I
appreciate
Hold on, we're still talking.
that.
We're not done yet.
Are we going to address the gentleman that spoke at the public hearing at the last council meeting about the towing? He was very upset. Consistency.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, no, it wasn't anything was brought to the communications, but he made a very valid point. And I was just wondering if we're gonna get something more consistent, and we're gonna try to keep towing in the city of Kingston, so we, remember the gentleman that spoke? What's that?
One of the media.
Right, yeah, he was sick in the hospital, and they towed his car and he backed up charges, he was in the hospital. And there was no giving any dispensation.
So we'll have to pull that up next one.
All right, well, I
Actually,
mean,
that might go through finance because they're talking about the fees and the contracts. They're telling us.
yeah, they weren't consistent, because certain drivers, certain towers were charging more,
And then there was like a double tap.
You have to go over Bronx to get his car.
Well, we have to look into it, see if that was actually true or not.
There's nothing, we don't have anything that says this.
well, I know, but.
He's just saying something, it wasn't.
But he's not the only one, we've had to have to refund people money because of issues in the past, because they brought their tickets in and we discussed it.
So
Some-
who's in charge of the companies at top?
well,
They
that's
do what
what,
they want to do.
It's
No,
just
but
like-
who is in charge?
that's what I want to know. I
Which
want to know.
company's coming to Kingston and tell them?
It's funny they have contracts. We have a contract, but the people outside the contract come in, the police call who they want. They say, Jimmy, can you send somebody over here, even though we are contracted
With
with.
A, B, and C,
Right.
they call
Right.
1, 2, 3.
And that's right, and then it was so far out, he couldn't even get out there, then one lady before had no idea where her car was for almost a week.
Well, then we need to
That
make
was
some,
in your
we
board,
need
yeah.
to discuss that if we have a contract with A, B, C, that's the only one who can come inside.
And she
Kingston
wasn't
and make
even
that.
legally parked.
You know.
Yeah, well,
So
that's-
that,
You have to
and we've been
discuss
lucky,
here
we've
at
had
this
no
table
snow, so
with
this
the
hasn't
police
become.
chief, how the arrangements are made.
Correct, yeah.
Right here it has to be done.
But it should be addressed to what, laws and rules or finance and economics? And do
Finance
both.
and economics.
And just
How
see
about
the
the-
state.
That's
We
what
have-
help send it to whatever committee.
Yeah, we just have to.
Can we see the
Yeah.
contracts? See, can we see the original contracts that are in place right now? Where's that
That's what I was
going?
talking about. You can't do anything tonight. You don't have anything.
No, no, but
So
for
we gotta
next,
get with the police department. They handle that.
they do the contracts?
Yes, we'll have to see what they have and they'll present it to us.
You pushed it
I-
over.
I'm-
So to know exactly what our contract
Send an email,
says.
communication, so it's on.
Yeah, let's just get on when it's.
Yeah, that's a good thing to bring up.
Am I the one that was do it from the?
You know, like,
We got a motion on it.
Pulling, you know.
Gabby, all set? We have a
Yes,
motion on the
I'm
floor to adjourn.
I motion.
Second?
Second.
Thank you, everybody. Anybody opposed to that?
I'll send you an